tomorrow, right? But as she said, I'm Elizabeth Marks, I have some daughters, and that's kind of where my story starts. They go to the Doolin Family YMCA Early Learning Academy in Chesterton. And if you've ever been there, you know it is connected to the Chesterton Middle School. In the morning, when we do drop-off and in the afternoon for pickups, there's some parents dropping their middle schoolers off at the back entrance while mine go into another entrance. And that's where I see a woman every morning, and she walks her son, who struggles with some disabilities. She walks him into school. Sometimes he's having a really good day. It seems like she sits in the car, kind of observes him watching or walking to school. And there are some days where it maybe seems like he's having a bad day. She carries his backpack, kind of helps him along. He uses a walker to walk. His legs have some trouble, and it's exhausting to watch, the poor kid. You know, it's a lot for him to get from the car to school. So one morning, I'm dropping my daughters off, and as 4-year-olds do, they ask crazy questions. So Maddie, my redhead, my crazy redhead, she says, "Mama," and I said, "Yeah, man." She goes, "Why does that boy walk so weird?" And so I took a moment, because I was like, she's gonna, whatever I say next is coming out 100 times in different ways, so make sure you say it right. I said, "Well, Matt, she doesn't walk weird," or he doesn't walk weird. It's just different than the way that you walk. I said, some kids have blue eyes, and some kids have brown eyes, and some kids are left-handed, and some kids have red hair like you know, and some kids have trouble hearing, and some kids have trouble walking. It doesn't make them weird, it just makes them different. So I turn around and I'm looking at them to see if it's sunk in. I'm getting tears in my eyes because my children have no issues other than attitude issues at the moment. 4.5, and I'm really scared for 16, but we'll get there, I think. But see, tears in my eyes just because I'm looking at them and thankful that attitude issues is what I deal with. So to me, when I see this woman, she has some courage that I could not even fathom coming up with day in and day out. You know, does she sit in the car and watch him struggle, watch him have the victory, watch him get into school and get there. As a mom, we want to nurture, we want to take care of. The easiest thing for her to do to stay in her comfort zone would be to get in there, put him down, get him whatever he needs, get him ready for class, and get back in the car and go home. But she doesn't. She stands there, she watches, she, you know, just sometimes just kind of guides him in there. But to me, the amount of courage that it takes to not do what it feels most natural for her to do at that moment is incredible. Some of you guys may or may not know, it took me 3 years to get pregnant with my girls. I have something called estrogen dominance, which makes me super fun sometimes. Sorry, babe. I have endometriosis, which is also super fun, and so it took me 3 years. It was a lot of different medications and drugs and procedures and surgeries and finally in vitro for me to have my kids. Something that kind of, you know, my reaction to things as I was going through all this process was, you know, well, that didn't work, and my reaction to everything was just, okay, well, now what? Now what? What's next? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? I'm impatient. Lots of people know that about me. Just want to get it done. So I was kind of thinking that maybe the people in my support system are waiting for me to break down. I didn't. I was just ready for what was next, ready for what happened. So in vitro day came. I had 4 really good embryos. I used 2 that day, and 2 I put on ice. You pay this really weird storage locker fee for it. It's kind of bizarre. Like auto charge your credit card. So it was the day, and I got a funny call 10 days later from Angela over at Chicago IVF in Buffalo, and she was laughing, and she's just calling. She said, "You're pregnant," and I'm like, "Okay, now what?" You know, like, I've never heard a yes, I've never heard a positive, I've never heard something good on the other end of the phone when it comes to any of this stuff. So it was really exciting to hear. And so she's telling me now what? She's telling me, well, you're pregnant, so, figure it out. You're gonna throw up for 6 months, it'll be fine, it'll be all right. So I asked her at the end of the phone call, I said, I have to ask why you're laughing. And she said, well, honey, your hormone levels are so high, you have to have multiples. It's just, you do. And so that was 10 days later, right? So I kind of was, all right, well, we'll just see what happens. And finally, 39 weeks, 51 hours, and 14 pounds. I had 2 babies, Madeline Era and Amelia Bell. About right after birth. Something that felt really important to me during that time was to donate back to people who had similar struggles, maybe not the same medical issues, but similar struggles. So people, any extra drugs that I had that weren't opened, I donated back to the center that I used for IVF. About a year after my girls were born, I got a divorce. And a decision that we had to make as a divorcing couple was what to do with the 2 frozen embryos. You have a couple options. It's a very weird process. And we decided what felt really important to us was to donate them and put them up for adoption. For the women in the room, that time of the month, you have 1 egg that goes. I had 19. At a time, I felt like I was walking and people could see my ovaries, like at the grocery store. It was super weird. So I did not have a problem with that with all of the medications that they were giving me, so I just felt like it was right for us to donate those back. No one can ever find me, or I won't ever know if they got used, and it's likely that they won't. But I was able to do that, and there are many couples and women out there who can't even make the embryo. So it felt like a really good thing to do. My purpose in opening up is because struggling with infertility is uncomfortable. It's lonely, and it's isolating, and it makes you feel like a failure, because no matter what, women's bodies were built to create. And when you can't do that, no matter what the medical reason, even if it makes logical sense to you, it doesn't necessarily click emotionally. It just doesn't necessarily always make sense. I was blessed to meet a woman about 2 years ago. She was very involved with my kids, and my kids have learned a lot from her, but she asked me, she just kind of got involved, and people, the first thing you have twins, and people say, oh my gosh, are those twins? You're like, yeah, they're twins, Yeah, so are they identical? Do they look the same? No, they don't, they're not identical. So my girls, she kind of asked me about my girls. She said, were they natural in your family? And I said, yes, however, my kids were in vitro. I have their Petri dish lid at home, I saved it. And we talked about it. I could tell it was an uncomfortable topic for her, but it was a very comfortable topic for me. I'll talk about it with anyone. And so I could tell the more that I talked, the more comfortable she got. And she ended up sharing with me that she is going through a similar struggle, a year and a half, maybe 2 years, attempting to start a family. It's a really hard thing to relate to if you haven't been through it in a way, because the classic thing that you'll hear somebody say, I used to get this all the time, the second year I was trying to get pregnant, people are like, are you gonna have a family? Are you gonna have a family? Yeah, we're trying. Well, just stop trying, it'll happen. And that's what everybody says, and if you ever said it, don't say it. It's the worst thing you can hear. It's the worst thing you can hear as somebody going through that, because every time you try, you're trying. Every time you go to bed, you're trying. And it doesn't matter, if you don't, or if you have a whole bottle of wine, or 6 bottles of wine, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, you're always trying. I've invited some of my friends to join us tonight to be in a room full of courageous women. I wanted them to know that they're not alone. And everyone has been through something. My motley crew over there. We've been through divorce, sexual assault, death, infertility, cancer, addiction, miscarriage, on and on. Because you guys talked about it, whatever it is to you. You were courageous in a way that you may not know. The woman in the school parking lot in the morning has no idea that she inspires me every time I see her bright yellow car. She gives you some perspective when I've had a tough morning with my girls. The snap of the rubber band that we sometimes need to get out of the funk and get back to life. You never know who's watching, and you never know what problems they have or when they're going to have them, but what I can guarantee is that there will be a day that you decide it's your day to get out of your comfort zone and to have courage. And I can also guarantee you that someone will be watching you, and you will be their inspiration.